Kind of a few things that I wanted to go through with it being such a crazy day with Ethereum was kind of, a little recollection of and reflection both on, kind of what it is, what Ethereum is. And I mean, the amount of people that have gotten into mining in the last probably 2 months that have reached out to us and we've tried to help with problems and stuff with their mining rigs and stuff really shows how big the community has really gotten. And one thing that keeps coming up is folks looking at different sources for kind of, why is Ethereum the price that it is? What does it actually do? There's several attempts out there on the internet to explain it. We've never really done an explanation of it. Essentially, our channel has been very dedicated just to mining, helping people get mining rigs set up, try to work through the problems with that. Very mechanical in nature. That's been kind of the structure of our channel, to be very, forthcoming and transparent when it comes to like what a card does, try not to waste your money on other things, and just show you guys the proof. Just we go out, we grab it, we plug it in, we show you guys what it does. And then find and collaborate with folks that have found better practices on that. But again, all of it's been very predicated on mining and mining only. Disjoining the fact of what the actual mining's doing, like what are we upholding? What's the benefit of the proof of work algorithm that the mining rigs are, all chewing on to try to work to get that token, and really how does that all fit together in the big grand scheme of just cryptocurrencies and the feature sets that come with it. So I felt that it was kind of time, especially with a new group of folks, to kind of, do a reflection on what is Ethereum, at least, from our interpretation of what it is, what it could be, all that kind of stuff, and just kind of start off very simple. So if you're around Ethereum, you know about how it works and all that, this next probably 5 minutes would be maybe super boring. Maybe it's a different perspective on it from somebody else that you've seen about it. But what I wanted to kind of bring up, and I made some clear notes that I wanted to make sure I covered. And I put a couple links, right? A lot of this stuff on the internet in general, we source off the internet ourselves, right? We go out, we look at sources, we read it, we interpret it, we try to figure out, okay, if that's the way I was thinking about it, and then, we redistribute it based on just discussions and, explaining it. So, I mean, right from the explanation that's out there for what Ethereum is essentially it sits on a blockchain. It is a blockchain, and it's different than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is it's a blockchain also, but it really only has one core use case with it, and that is a point-to-point transaction, a distributed transaction, and it's one that does not have central authority. Ethereum kind of took that and think of if you think of Bitcoin like a vehicle, Ethereum is like gas within a vehicle. It's a commodity. It's why it also has an immutable blockchain. It has a feature set that is included with it. All the ERC20 coins that come out that are being bridged off of Ethereum too are also bringing additional feature sets to them. The main purpose of them was to decentralize, communications, have secure transactions, something that you could go out and verify. You didn't need a person telling you that the computer systems would handle that proof of, actual writing of the transaction. The proof of work and that the algorithms that allow for the incentivization of it are a little different. That's really to kind of incentivize people to uphold the network. Essentially, cool idea was thought of, was architected and figured out, and then this is from essentially Satoshi, and figured out how am I going to incentivize people to contribute onto this network, to hold up the network. How am I going to get folks to facilitate these transactions independently and distributed? And that's essentially where that use case of the token idea came up, and an exchange of something of possibly value at one point in time would be for that effort of holding up that network. That's at a nutshell, that's the bottom line of what that is. What raises speculative pricing or what raises pricing by and large is speculation until there's a real, true, genuine use case and consumption of that product. So from Bitcoin, it's the consumption is just people holding it, storing it of value, and it becomes more. It's a deflationary nature type of thing where the supply is going to be limited, and if it has adoption, and it has that confidence, being not messed with, meaning like folks don't go and change the root code on it to increase the supply, then it's there's a rarity to it. So from a Bitcoin transaction piece, its main use case is just point to point. But it is a store value. I mean, we've seen that. It is right now a store value now, but Ethereum's a little different. It can be used as a store value, but its intention was a little different. The intention was to have a fuel-based commodity token that when folks would write applications and they would deploy it to the Ethereum network, they required Ethereum to run. So it becomes kind of a managed service model to where the price, by and large, if a whole bunch of applications were deployed and ran on the Ethereum network, really the price of the service, i.e. how much is the gas that they would need to run their application, should really predicate the price, in theory. I.e. if Ethereum rose to some crazy number, $50,000, let's say, and if the gas price is based on effectively the first kind of Satoshi level, 9 decimals to the right, then that's going to cost something. So if something at application runtime takes 50,000 equivalent Satoshis of gas, and I know they call it ether, but that has a value. And if it's too high, then people aren't going to use the service. So there's an equilibrium that will eventually occur with Ethereum if, and it's an if, I believe it will be, but if large applications, large implementations of applications are leveraged on the public chain, that then gives the Ethereum a method of where you're going to need consumption from people that are building applications, and they're going to spend essentially Ethereum as part of the smart contracts to execute the applications at runtime. So that commodity model is really brilliant in nature if you think about it, because it gives a consumption mechanism as part of the economy. And I mean, you could go into like economies of scale. Like, I mean, if you just take gaming and MMOs, right? One of the complex things when the game programmers are looking at MMOs is the economy. You don't want to have too much, gold farming, and you have to control some kind of, burn on that, some kind of they would call it like a money sink. The essential repetitive use of Ethereum applications at runtime would essentially use Ethereum, repay back that, and you'd have usage of a requirement for it. So right now, pricing setting at Ethereum at like a $300, $400 price point is mainly driven based on the concept of it's super speculative, but it's also based on the fact that if large institutions are going to deploy their applications on the public chain, then there's going to be a big run-up on potential price because there's going to be a genuine requirement for the Ethereum. There's a couple real big open questions that I have, and I haven't researched it enough to see what really the cost of operation would cost for a basic application. I mean, the price tables are out there right now to figure out how many lines of code it will cost to run, but to actually have something that is posting, And mind you, when I talk replication runtime, I'm not, for the programmers out there, I'm not talking about like service level instant response database stuff. I'm talking one of the major use cases of Ethereum potentially will be the Internet of Things, right? You've probably heard that from several sources. And what that means in a nutshell, for people that have no idea what the hell Internet of Things means, there's a really cool use case going on right now that is not blockchain, but could absolutely go to blockchain with with police. And when they deholster their weapon, in whatever situation they're at, their body cameras will turn on. So that type of mechanism, to where if an officer pulls his weapon and his body camera automatically turns on, right now it's going to a database, a basic centralized database that's probably hosted by a third party, stored probably in a cloud somewhere. But that's a central authority. So if you take that use case and now you've bound that to a blockchain, something like Ethereum, somebody writes a very simplified application on the blockchain, to where when that weapon's unholstered and that body camera turns on, the basic operation and something like an Ethereum app that could be written is the time and date and the seconds that occurred, and it snaps it onto that immutable ledger. That's not being reversed. It's been validated. It's checked. And that's a thing, right? So now you're looking at it as a database side. So there's things like that, Internet of Thing devices, and what all Internet of Things, we put a basic description out there, is just any device that's really connected to the internet that can interact with other devices and just kind of work in sync, take on updates, that kind of stuff. So you can start to tie those kind of things together that seem very just arbitrary in nature, but storing that on a blockchain and being able to go back to it and being able to adjudicate that through like the court of law and all that kind of stuff. And this is any country, it doesn't matter, there's police everywhere. So this is just one small use case, and that would use like a little bit of gas. So you'd have like essentially the police department or the state or the country or whatever have essentially their entire setup with a wallet where they're having to pull just a little bit of gas to pay for all those transactions to post. And that's kind of a use case. So that's kind of one of those things that they didn't need to go buy a big rack server. They didn't need to hold a whole bunch of storage. They would be having all of that transaction data, essentially very quick and easy single line post of information as part of that transaction history. I mean, you're talking not much data that would be really flowing with that. And then you could have it link back to other holistical big data type of projects that are sitting in some big data warehouse or something. But the thing that matters is the fact that that officer unholstered his weapon and did something, right? And it protects him and it protects the people that's getting the weapon pulled on him. And that small event, that one little, just that event right there alone, being captured on an immutable blockchain is the essence of what I'm trying to say. Of like the use case, like people have asking like what's going on with Ethereum and what could it do. So that's the kind of stuff that gets people excited about it. But I think that's a smaller niche. I think that's a closed niche that's working on those things that are not speculating the price. So then you have a whole group of folks that are speculating price up, that are trying to make a buck, trying to make it, drive prices up. It's on a super unregulated market right now. So, I mean, I'm not going to speculate on what people could be doing to exchanges and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just, those would be all assumptions without any kind of proven data. I don't have any kind of data or anything like that to prove it. It's just, seems super consistent. Like when things go down or things start to slip price wise, then now we can't access services, and that I think is going to get shored up here. I would assume it's going to get shored up pretty soon. Either they're going to have to fix the outages or they're just going to get a lot of regulation on them, just because people that are unaware are going to to have winners, you have losers, right, on the market. That's the way it works. So if a lot of people keep losing, it's going to drive some regulation. I mean, it's not that everybody needs to win. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the way the market works, right? But if it seems like it's being really played with a lot, then it's just the natural order of things. I mean, you're going to have enough people that are going to drive it to get some stuff done with it. So, and the regulators will go in there and they'll clean it up. I mean, I have no doubt at all that that if they're pushed hard enough from folks, that things will start to change. And that's unfortunate with a lot of the ICO stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of potential. That one use case I was talking about just a second ago is one small little piece of what blockchain technology can bring to everybody in society. So I kind of jumped ahead of explaining what Ethereum was, and then kind of went into value proposition. That's effectively what I just talked about, was a value proposition of what Ethereum is. And there's many more value propositions. I mean, transparency, governance on stuff, secure communications, backbones for e-commerce. I mean, there's a lot of the way supply chain works and anybody that's really kept up on Ethereum in general understands some of the major use cases that are being looked at right now across the industry. And it is no kidding. I mean, that Microsoft Azure platform that's out there right now, you can essentially, go out there and make a free account. You'll probably have to put some money on to spin the ARM template up, but essentially they have an entire Ethereum ecosystem that you can spin up. You start off with 1 trillion Ether on a private chain. So if you ever wanted to see a balance that high and go crazy, it allows you to really kind of make your own application and then start to burn against that internal Ether. Those private chains in a dev world, to give the folks that don't understand how development works in general, you usually have like a dev, a test, a kind of pre-implementation integration, like a pre-production and a production. The Ethereum blockchain is production. That is around the world, distributed, agnostic to if it's proof of work or if it's proof of stake at the end of the day. Because all the application is transacting, essentially posting messages and moving contracts to different states. It's a state engine system, essentially, that has timestamps and all that kind of workflow. But, you got other coins out there, other potential features on other tokens that would turn potentially proof of work mining systems. And this is also why, this is kind of getting into why I believe mining will be here for a long time. I think the graphics card, I think the industry's going to figure out an option for a lot of folks to have like a gaming and a mining kind of setup that will become more predictable. I think the long term on mining in general is it's not going anywhere. It's going to be there because the whole concept of distributed computing is going to get supercharged. That whole basic idea of like Golem and Gnosis and all those large distributed computing platform concepts, to where you can have a very complex job. Let's say you're wanting to do some kind of forecasting, or you're in a school project and you're trying to do some big data stuff, but you don't have like access to a SaaS server or some kind of large processing engine. You could go out and buy some Golem at some point in time if they shake out their bugs and issues, and be able to put that problem set against that network, and then that distributes it across all the parallel tasking of all the miners out there. And it's not just a proof of work. They'll get an actual job to then parse all that kind of data out across thousands of GPUs and process it very quickly. There's real world application in the need of that, from state, local government to potentially big industry, movie studios. Who knows? I mean, distributed computing in general, that whole concept, storage for cloud, like Scicoin and Storage J. I mean, there's huge potential in that too from cloud storage standpoint. And there's no reason not to include consumers into that, because most of the folks that are on this channel are consumers, and they happen just to have an opportunity to get into holding up a platform with a mining machine. So if people ever want to know, like, dude, why do you have like 7 cards in your basement? What the hell's up that? Your basic explanation to them is that you're performing a service, and for that service you're getting a token, and that token happens to be worth some exchange level at some point in time, because it does move a little, or a lot in Ethereum's case today. But that whole explanation to them shows you that you're kind of like the managed service for that particular platform. And granted, a lot of them are not live. Almost everything is in test, guys. Like, almost everything on the platform besides pretty much Bitcoin and Ripple are essentially in their test phases, because to run those applications at runtime, or to deploy those applications on the public networks, there's a distinct cost with that right now. We see the prices, right? So figuring that out in their little chain, enclaves, like through spinning up small private chains right now, isn't that, there might be some intention. I would assume that somebody's going to try to create some kind of private chain to private chain connection type of thing. But you do that at the expense of security. What you get with the distributed computing is the security. That's probably the most. So where if somebody was able to point a lot of hash power on that private chain because they were able to get into that enclave, they could technically go out and hard fork that that instance essentially, or rewrite history. So to deploy, that's the other value proposition with the public chain, is that you have a ton of hash power on it from a proof of work standpoint. You also have a ton of, if it's a proof of stake type of system, or even a hybrid system, you have a ton of distributed independent verifiers essentially out there to counteract any kind of rewriting of transactions or anything like that. That's the whole point of a mutable ledger, is that it's posting it and it's always going to be forever. But those are a lot of the main propositions. And I know this is like way, I'm 23 minutes into kind of talking to you guys, but way off of our normal channel stuff. I usually do not have this kind of interaction. You guys can say, never do this again, and tell me, like, dude, just stick to mining. That's perfectly fine. I do not mind the criticism at all. It's the only way we all learn, is, like, hey, you could have said this a little differently, or hey, that I never thought of it that way, but what about this? That kind of interaction with the community. And I think by and large, the mining community, you guys are great. The comments and stuff, it's been spectacular. You guys are taking care of each other. You guys are trying to make sure each other's figuring out stuff. I think we get a bad rap. I think the mining community in general gets a bad rap. Right now, it's definitely getting a bad rap because there's a couple exchanges out there, or not exchanges, but pools out there doing some kind of questionable stuff. That's going to be a kind of a shameless plug that, if you guys, I haven't researched it fully, but there's a few posts out there with a lot of comments that a couple pools out there for Ethereum are just creating kind of havoc on the network by, mining empty blocks and just causing a whole bunch of hell out there. And, I would say right now we stick with ethermine.org, or if you have a lot of hash power, you can go to ethpool.org. I would not go to ethpool if you only have like 100 mega hash. You will not get a block for a long time. So Ethermine, I would encourage, after you get your next payouts or whatever, to move to that, to maybe show some of those other pools. I think it's Dwarf Pool, and you guys can tell me the other one on the chat. There's a couple pools out there that are kind of doing some shady stuff. And the natural way the pools work, guys, is you guys omit your right to make decisions essentially on what they're doing with your hash power. Essentially, you point to their pool, they're taking your hash power, and then they're combining all of that as the full proof of work, but they can tag on to manipulate the output of the miner, or the output of your hash power, and you're omitting that right essentially when you go to a pool. There is no direct solo mining anymore. I mean, you can go to ETH pool and just earn your credits up to solo mine, or you can go to like Ether pool, which has the same way that you're getting paid out in your other pools right now. But there's a couple pools out there that are kind of being a little weird, and I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just saying that we mine on ETH mine. They seem to be pretty straightforward and legit. So, Nano pool I think is good too. I don't see them on the hate list right now from everybody, but that's. I mean, tell me what you guys think. I mean, I kind of went down deep on Ethereum and some of the use case. I tried not to get into like the basic stuff you guys already know. I mean, you guys can do some basic research on how, Bob and Alice kind of diagrams of how it actually mechanically works between blockchains. But hopefully this was semi-informative, a different perspective on it. Let me know if I'm looking at chat now. So let's see if I had anything else on my little agenda here. I go through the value proposition piece stamp, and then I was going to kind of get into question and answer. Let's see here. Yeah, and if you guys had any super chats, I'm going to go through any super chats at the end, and read them off. But yeah, we can go through, some questions and try to look. And I know this is not a mining thing, and I'm sorry, when I get back in, I actually went to Micro Center. They actually had nothing. I mean, they had 1080 and some 1080 Ti's, but pretty much nothing else. So let's see here. Let's answer some questions here, guys. Let's see here. It's kind of rolling. Would you still mine? Yes. Nice hash is good still too. I don't think there's anything wrong with nice hash. I actually use nice hash too. I should disclose that too. So let's see here. I'm looking now. Daniel, please keep doing this type of thing. As miners, we really need to know the full spectrum of what's going on. Oh, you know what? The thing I didn't get into was what's going on with the Ethereum network, if you guys want to know what's going on with that. I'm reading some of the other questions. Yeah, so I'll talk briefly about what's going on from what I've been able to research on it. But bottom line, Ethereum, so there was an ICO that just came out and had a race condition essentially in the underlying part of their code, which I'll give you the actual definition of a race condition, and I'll kind of explain it it's essentially, so the wiki definition is an undesirable situation that occurs when a device or a system performs two or more operations at the same time. Because of the nature of the device or system, the operation must be done in the proper sequence to be done correctly. So essentially, whichever contract code that they had in there both kicked off at the same time, and it's essentially causing a condition where it goes a little erratic, and it's all timing based, and bad things happen. So Ethereum essentially was supposed to have kind of a mechanism in place to not de-incentivize a race condition, because technically you can put a race condition really in anything, but the gas costs would spend out and then it would just kill the operation. So I haven't done a ton of research right now of when it's going to end, or when it's going to hit like an out of gas point. That condition should just be chewing through gas costs right now, in theory, and then end, and then we'll lighten up the network. But the unfortunate thing is it's affecting everything, not just Ethereum, guys. It's anything that's an ERC20 coin. So, again, this is the problem with, it's a weird conundrum. So most of the time you wouldn't deploy any kind of application or any kind of new fork of that on a public domain until you really kind of had it shook out. I think there was some discussion about how some people looked at what they were about to do and said, hey, this is not good, and they still pressed forward. Again, this is just me reading folks proof of that, on Reddit, kind of laying it out, saying, hey, we told you here, and we told you this was a bad idea here, and then it still kind of pressed forward, and it's kind of affecting everybody. And it shows you kind of the unfortunate immaturity of the network in general. Like, there should be nothing to get businesses incited to move the infrastructure that I was just talking about onto the public chain. This issue with ICOs and stuff implementing their connection with so tightly coupled with Ethereum, because they're based off of that, to affect the Ethereum network in general is going to have to get fixed. Let's just say that. So if it's in a new version, if it's Casper that comes out, nobody should be able to take down the entire network. I mean, even if it's, especially a distributed network. So, and I know Bitcoin with its transaction detail and the miners, in Bitmain, and there's a whole bunch of drama. I got it. But this is part of the growing pains that Ethereum and every other cryptocurrency needs to get through and get it figured out before real applications will start to run on the public side. The private chains gives them the flexibility to control it. And it isn't for control and power, it's for control and making sure customers aren't, screwed over if they're relying on this as a service. The last thing you'd want to say, if we go back to what I was saying earlier with the whole police holster issue, the last thing you want to do is, now it should queue that transaction, but if you need to know that information immediately, it needs to post out to the network, and you can't have an ICO trying to push new code out and then freezing up the entire worldwide distributed network. So that kind of stuff shows the infancy of the production side, and they're working through it. The Ethereum has a solid development base. Their dev meetings are public, and a lot of their discussions are public. The Ethereum Foundation holds their dev meetings on YouTube. You can listen to them. So it's just one of those things that you have to work through. There is nothing. I buy an iPhone, you name it, anything we get into, there's always kind of bugs and fixes that has to happen and fix. So as long as people are working in transparency and they figure it out, it's just like the price went down and it went right back up. There's still a lot of value in the Ethereum network and all these coins. It's not going anywhere. There's a huge amount of investment, a huge amount of people that's life's work is it. It's not going anywhere. Let me see if I see any questions that you guys have. But that's essentially it. Looks like we got a couple of super chats. Adam Rucker, $5 super chat. Thanks, bud. Can you run an 8 NVIDIA cards and 4 AMD? Yes, you can. So we're gonna do a couple videos this weekend. If I can have the 980 Ti rig fully built and running good, I'm going to do the 980 Ti build this weekend. The other build that I was going to do is a multi-card, multi-brand, so NVIDIA, AMD, full-on build of both in the same machine, and show you how to configure each one individually, having them all run additionally. So it's a 2-part use case there. One is a mixed card setup. So not just the, 4 cards and 4 cards of the same type. I'm talking like 1050 Ti, 470 RX 470, RX 370, 1060 NVIDIA. I mean, talking one rig with like 8 cards that are all different, showing you that can work and that works fine. It's kind of a pain to configure each card because you're going to have to manipulate each card manually, but walk you guys through on how that is. And then do, or at least attempt to do, the 8 NVIDIA card, an 8 NVIDIA card rig, and then add 4, I think I have enough adapters because I think our 3-to-1 came in, to where I'd have 12 cards in one rig, essentially, to where we'll have, and running on Windows, because you can run 8 cards in Windows with the NVIDIA driver, and then you could run some with the AMD driver. So essentially 12 cards in Windows. But I want to show it to you guys. I want to get it set up. I want to show you how we do it, and then get that. And then I'm going to do, I believe, an OS build from cradle to grave for the new folks trying to figure out that Windows, install drivers, get everything working. $1, what is that? I don't even know what denomination that is. From Robbie, thank you, Robbie. Reggie James, how much mega hash should we be generating to work worthwhile to ETH pool from? So the main question Reggie's asking is, at what threshold do you hit mega hash wise to really consider going to ETH pool? And I'm going to tell you guys a reason why ETH pool's cool and great to use is essentially you're mining a full block. And what that means is the next block that they win, you earn enough credits. So you point all your hash power there, and you got a credit bar. And essentially you're just sitting there putting in shares, helping the distributed effort of that entire pool to win blocks. And what they do is kind of like a next in line type of thing, right? So it's like this person had enough credits to win the next block. This person had enough credits to win the next block. The cool thing about that is that you got 5 Ether essentially on each block payment. But every once in a while you'll get something called an uncle, which you'll get the 5 Ether plus the uncle. The last bit of hash power that we had on there, we got an uncle. So essentially we got paid. It took us, I think, like 4.5 days to get a full payment. And then we got an uncle on top of it, which was 4.4 Ether. So it was almost 10 Ether for like 4 days of effort. But you need a lot of hash power for that. I think we had close to 2 gigahash on that at the time. And I don't even think 2 gigahash now gets you in 4 days. I think 2 gigahash will maybe get you in 6.5, 7 days with the exponential difficulty rise. If you have like a 1.5, maybe just over 1 gigahash, you could mine ETH pool, but I would honestly, the math is adding up right now to just do Ether mine with 1 gigahash and lower.